What am I to the narcissist? The intimate partner secondary source. The narcissist has a fuel matrix. Within that fuel matrix, people, appliances, are allocated positions. Tertiary sources, either intimate or non-intimate. Secondary sources, non-intimate or intimate. A primary source, usually intimate but can also be, in certain instances, non-intimate. There are differing reasons why people are selected in the positions that they are. Sometimes they can move positions, sometimes they do not. The treatment of those individuals within the various positions of the hierarchy of the fuel matrix can vary, and it's often puzzling for certain people to understand precisely what they are to the narcissist. For those who have become ensnared with our kind, it's a frequent question to wonder, what am I to the narcissist? Of course, the short answer is, you're an appliance that is there to be controlled, that you're there to have fuel extracted from you, and quite possibly provide character traits and residual benefits. However, those that have begun to understand the narcissistic dynamic to some extent want to know how they have been regarded by the narcissist in terms of that dynamic. Invariably, their truth-seeker trait causes them to want to understand their position within the hierarchy and why they are where they are. This results in a multitude of questions, and the most common ones are, was I a primary source? I don't think I was devalued. Why was that? Have I been disengaged from, also known as discarded? Why did he or she not commit to me? How has he or she moved on to somebody else so quickly? Why did I have such a short golden period? I feel like I'm always hanging on for this person. Why is that? It's actually the case that these questions tend to be asked by someone who holds the position of intimate partner secondary source, the IPSS. Although that person may not actually realize that that is the position that they have been allocated. By way of brief recap, someone who is a primary source may be an intimate partner or, less usually, a non-intimate partner. In the vast majority of cases, the primary source is an intimate partner, thus a spouse, partner, boyfriend or girlfriend. You spend most of your time together, and this arrangement occurs so that we are able to draw fuel from you regularly. The fuel is of one of the highest potencies because of the greater emotional connection that you have to us by reason of being that primary source. And you are the individual that provides character traits and residual benefits better than anybody else, along with being the easiest person in the fuel matrix to control, or that there is a balance of what you provide and the extent to which you are controlled means that you get positioned as the primary source. Occasionally, the primary source is not an intimate partner, and in such circumstances is usually a family member, but sometimes it can be a friend. A secondary source is a colleague, a friend, a family member, a lover, an affair partner. The position depends upon intimacy or non-intimacy. The secondary source will be seduced so that their loyalty, i.e. control, and fuel is secured. With non-intimate secondary sources, this is not done in a romantic fashion, but is done through charm, through pleasantry, through expectation where it's a family link, through doing favours and handing out benefits, so that the appliance becomes drawn to the narcissist and then is installed in the position of secondary source. For family members, that's an immediate allocation by virtue of being related. But for those that become friends, become colleagues, they are placed as a non-intimate secondary source. The secondary source has an elongated golden period. This is because of the following factors. First of all, the narcissist will only draw on the secondary source's fuel intermittently, compared to the heavier usage of the fuel of the primary source, which means that there is a less likelihood for that fuel to become stale. Thus, it's far less likely that this will trigger devaluation. The secondary source is usually more compliant and does what the narcissist wants, because the demands made of him or her are not as extensive as those that are made on the primary source, which means there's less likelihood as a consequence of them being problematic and thus incurring devaluation. Because we spend less time with the secondary source, it follows there's less opportunity for them, to put it bluntly, to annoy us. They're less likely in such circumstances to have the opportunity to threaten our control. Furthermore, as a whole, secondary sources are less likely to challenge, wound, or defy the narcissist, thus resulting in devaluation. Now, this isn't to say that secondary sources aren't devalued. They are, and they get corrective devaluations. Although a secondary source will enjoy a lengthy golden period, they may not ever be devalued. If they provide fuel, they are disloyal, they fail to do what the narcissist wants, they may be devalued. In some instances, they'll be devalued and popped on the shelf. In other instances, they may be disengaged from. But this is unusual. More likely, they'd be left on the shelf to, in essence, isolate the rotten apple from hanging around and polluting the minds of other members of the coterie. It's also the case that the narcissist can then utilize other secondary sources within the hierarchy and turn to those existing ones, or possibly even seduce a new one. Devaluation may only occur where an example needs to be made of the secondary source. This is usually more of the case for colleagues and family members, as there is a connection beyond friendship. Or that the narcissist requires negative fuel and doesn't regard the devaluation as likely to damage the facade. All secondary sources commence their relationship with the narcissist from a non-intimate starting point, and for some, that may be all they ever are. But in some instances, they are promoted to the position of intimate partner secondary source. This can happen as a consequence of an act of intimacy between, for instance, colleagues, and thus that person becomes the intimate partner secondary source. Or a friendship becomes intimate. It could be that someone has started dating the individual and it has moved into the realms of intimacy. In some instances, it occurs as a consequence of the fact that the narcissist is devaluing the intimate partner primary source, and that takes off the shackles, meaning that the narcissist is now free to cheat and potentially seek a replacement. It's often the case that the narcissist may well have more than one individual as the intimate partner secondary source. In a sense, the narcissist is subconsciously holding auditions for those who may be promoted to the position of primary source. This can result in several scenarios arising. The existing primary source, let us say this is a wife, is being devalued. The narcissist embarks on an affair with another woman who is the intimate partner secondary source. She may have been someone that the narcissist has known as a non-intimate secondary source friend for some time and has recently promoted. Or he may have approached her, they become an intimate partner, they become a non-intimate secondary source friend, but then very quickly intimacy commences. In this dynamic, the intimate partner secondary source may know about the wife and hear the usual stories of, my wife doesn't understand me, as she is smeared to the IPSS. She is described as abusive, unloving, and so forth. This is done to assert control over the intimate partner secondary source by making them feel that the marriage, the relationship is on its last legs, meaning that they're less likely to walk away, and also to indirectly assert control over the intimate partner primary source, because the intimate partner secondary source agrees that that person isn't very kind for treating the narcissist in that particular way. The individual is seduced, and, dependent upon your responses, this may well convince the narcissist subconsciously that you will then make it an effective primary source. meaning you become the candidate intimate partner secondary source with the resultant effect that eventually the IPPS is disengaged from, and then you are installed as the replacement intimate partner primary source. The scenario might be as I've just described, but there may be periods during your seduction as the intimate partner secondary source where the narcissist goes quiet. In effect, you're being left on the shelf. It's often the case that the intimate partner secondary source thinks that this is devaluation. It isn't. The narcissist regards a secondary source as an intermittent provider of fuel. And when this happens, what's likely to happen is that the intimate partner primary source is getting a respite period, so they're painted white. So the narcissist views them as favourable once again, meaning that you're left on the shelf. The narcissist isn't interacting with you. The narcissist allows a golden period again. He or she is preoccupied with the existing incumbent primary source, and in effect, you are then kept on ice. The devaluation of the existing primary source will start again, as it always does, and then you are likely to be taken off the shelf and engaged with. Eventually, the narcissist may well deem you worthy of promotion, and therefore you become embedded as the new intimate partner primary source, and that means the existing one is disengaged from. This can take months or even years. During this period of being taken on and off the shelf, if you accept the periods of quiet without complaint, you won't be devalued as the intimate partner secondary source. However, if you question what is going on, you will be devalued. You'll be subjected to corrective devaluations and pop back on the shelf. You may be, for instance, subjected to future faking in order to maintain your interest. The narcissist will talk about needing to sort out divorce arrangements. The house is taking too long to sell. The children need to be sorted out. He hasn't got round to telling his parents yet. It's not a good time for this to happen because the eventual ex-spouse's father has died, or it's a birthday and I can't do it just yet, or it's nearly Christmas and so forth. This future faking is done to keep you under control by utilising the promise of something in the future to control you in the now, and essentially because the narcissist regards you as too valuable to disengage from and wants to keep you in the place. But you're not quite ripened, if you will. You've not quite come to fruition to the extent that the narcissism recognises that you must now be the intimate partner primary source and the incumbent one disengaged from. It can also be the case that this is the ongoing scenario, but there is another intimate partner secondary source competing with you. In order to improve the chances of the narcissist securing an excellent replacement for the incumbent intimate partner primary source, they are being devalued, and the narcissist is cultivating leads with at least 2 intimate partner secondary sources. It's worth pointing out that the intimate partner secondary source might be one of the shelf variety or a dirty little secret. I explain what those are in separate videos. Where you are the intimate partner secondary source, the narcissist may spend the occasional wonderful weekend with you, but makes various excuses to keep you under control as to how we can only see you once a month. This is being done because the narcissist is continuing to devalue the primary source, also needs time to spend time with the other intimate partner secondary source that's being cultivated, but also needs to keep you hanging around. It's also done to test your resolve. If you reject such an arrangement, the narcissism effectively concludes that you lack the appropriate traits that will make you a good primary source. As you challenge the narcissist too readily, you lack stickability, and you're not responding to the narcissist's charm or seduction as deeply as had been anticipated. Accordingly, attention is likely to switch to the other intimate partner secondary source, but you're unlikely to be discarded or disengaged from. You've shown potential, you've provided fuel, you may have character traits and residual benefits, so there's no point throwing you to one side, but better to put you as a particular toy back in the cupboard that could be played with on another occasion, i.e. you're put back on the shelf whilst we focus on the other intimate partner secondary source. If you don't challenge the arrangement, it's effectively a straight fight between you and the other intimate partner secondary source as to whoever might be crowned as the intimate partner primary source. You may know about the ongoing devalued intimate partner primary source, but you're unlikely to know about the other IPSS. You'll both be tested, so you can expect cancelled arrangements, occasional bouts of odd acts and distant behaviours. This is done to test you during the seduction to ensure that you're made of the right stuff to be promoted to primary source and that you are superior to your competition. The nature of this competition is such that you may be in front 1 month and thus things seem to be going well with the narcissist, and then suddenly you're behind your competitor, so things become less pleasant. You are in essence jockeying for position, and all the while the narcissist is asserting control over you, your competitor, and the incumbent intimate partner primary source. In some instances, this can go on for months and years. If you learn that the intimate partner primary source has finally been disengaged from, but you find out that somebody else is being paraded around as the narcissist's girlfriend, and you cannot understand how that has happened because there is still, albeit minimal, contact with you, then you've lost the race to become the intimate partner primary source. This other person may seem to have come out of nowhere, but they have not. They have been cultivated behind the scenes, just as you've been cultivated behind the scenes. And the narcissist has decided that they would make the best primary source. The existing one has been disengaged from. The competitor, intimate partner secondary source who you knew nothing about, or might have just been referred to as a friend, becomes placed as the intimate partner primary source rather than you. Even when this happens, you're still unlikely to be disengaged from because the narcissist will still see value in keeping you as a secondary source. There's been investment in you, and if you don't cause a problem, the narcissist will retain you, but will pop you on the shelf, most likely not bothering with you during the golden period with the new intimate partner primary source. Or if they do, it will be in a non-intimate manner, even though you still retain the title of intimate partner secondary source. If you rail against this treatment, you will find yourself staying on the shelf for longer and quite possibly disengaged from. In some instances, you may find that there is no primary source. You're referred to as a partner or girlfriend, but your engagement with us is still intermittent, and excuses are made as to why the narcissist cannot see more of you. There are occasional periods of silence, and you're strung along in this position for some time, still unsure of what you actually are. Are you actually the narcissist's girlfriend or just a friend with benefits? When this happens, it's likely that the narcissist has several intimate partner secondary sources on his or her books. The combination of all these interests and the attendant fuel means that the narcissist doesn't need to install a primary source. This tends to happen with your more evolved narcissists, where they are able to juggle several plates at once, so the narcissist is content to alternate between the various intimate partner secondary sources until at some point somebody is installed as the intimate partner primary source. The intimate partner secondary source does not experience the standard template of seduction, devaluation, disengagement, and that is why many commentators fail to explain the behaviours of the narcissist effectively to someone who holds the position of intimate partner secondary source. The dynamic is different. The reason for this is that often you are effectively placed in limbo. You might not be good enough to be promoted to the position of primary source, but you remain too valued to be disengaged from, and thus the dance continues for as long as you will allow it without escaping, or posing too much of a problem so that you thus become disengaged from. Those who do not understand our kind tend to fall into the trap of thinking that we are some kind of commitment phobe, and therefore they will dole out erroneous advice to you in terms of making you try to bring about that commitment. All that will do is cause you to challenge the narcissist, actually diminishing the likelihood of the narcissist interacting with you. If you find yourself in the position of intimately engaging with someone who largely treats you well but only does so intermittently, who then seems to almost test you, and it can be difficult to spot this, and often issues lots of promises about what will happen in the future, but there is never any delivery, then there is every chance that you find yourself as the intimate partner secondary source of a narcissist. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.